Mielestäni tuossa oli myös Sedirillä hyviä myytin purkamisasioita, kun hän sanoi esimerkiksi, että tämä koko kohderyhmäajattelu, niin tämähän on ihan niin kuin vanhanaikaista ajattelua. Ja näillä myytin murtamisilla ja vanhojen totuuksien haastamisilla me jatketaan. Mä oon haastanut tässä siksi markkinointihankkeessa myös tätä meidän yleisöä siitä tosiaan, että me puhutaan tosi paljon sisäpiiriläistä jargongia. Mä ymmärrän sen, että silloin kun me myydään asiakkaille ja tälle yleisölle, Suomelle, sitä mitä me voitaisiin tehdä markkinoinnissa, mainonnassa, mediassa, niin mehän ollaan yhdenlaisia witch-doktoreita, jotka keksii aina uutta myytävää. Ja se onkin tietenkin meille niin kuin omassa bisneksessä keino erilaistua muista, että nyt meillä on joku uusi sisältömarkkinointi ja ansaittu media, mitä kaikkia jännittäviä nimiä meillä onkaan. Mä yhdessä tilaisuudessa, jossa oli mediaedustajia läsnä, mä sitten kuvasin sitä, että minkälaista tämä kielenkäyttö on, että mitä kaikkia termejä me yritetään esimerkiksi yritysjohdolle käyttää, että miksi me tarvitaan se budjetti meille. Ja sinne sitten tällaiseen pitkään listaan näitä tämän päivän in- ja pop-sanoja, niin livautin sitten 3 ihan omaa keksimääni mediatyyppiä, ja kukaan ei huomannut mitään. Siellä oli tällaiset kuin karusellikanavat, läsnäolomarkkinointi ja luovat pinnat. Jos joku teistä miettii jotain uutta ismiä, niin näillä ei ole mitään vielä sisältöä, kukaan ei ole ominut, eikä näitä ole mitenkään IPR-suojattu, että vapaasti voi käyttää. Mutta näitä on itse asiassa aika kiva keksiä myös. Mutta tästä tulee meille semmoinen haaste, että jos tällaisia sanoja käyttää vaikka, niin kukaan ei kysy, että hei, mitä se ihan oikeasti tarkoittaa, karusellikanavat, läsnäolomarkkinointi. Musta kuulosti tosi sympaattiselta, hyvältä markkinointijutulta. DECKER tulee meille seuraavaksi haastamaan meitä myyttien purkamisesta. Ja hänellä on hyvä rekordi siitä, että hän on tehnyt asioita isojen kansainvälisten jättien kanssa, kuten Procter & Gamblein kanssa ja Pepsin kanssa. Ja seuraava 45 minuuttia on näiden perinteisten ajatustapojen haastamista ja murtamista. Ja katsotaan, miten meidän bullshit-bingo-sanastolle käy sen jälkeen, kun Ethan on meidät haastanut. So, Ethan, welcome. Hi.
Hey. Good to see everybody. I am a scientist by training. I am not a marketer by training. I took a wrong turn somewhere and got out of science. My background is in biology, evolution, ecology, things like that. And now I work with Procter & Gamble and some other big brands doing marketing. That's a story for beers. But when I got into marketing, I wanted to know the science of marketing. What's the evidence? What are the theories? And I got a little antsy because I didn't find what I was looking for. So over the past decade, I have amassed a body of evidence and information, facts and data that help me understand how marketing really works. And today I'm going to share some of that data with you because I love data. I don't know if you do. You do? Good? Yes. We have data people. I will also be sharing stories because who doesn't love stories? We'll show a bunch of stories from my work with Kellogg's and Pepsi and brands like that. So, I like to start with ketchup. Is there anyone here who has never had ketchup? I don't see a single hand. I like ketchup as a good example because it's a product we all use, but we might not think a lot about it. I'll bet you all have your favorite brand of ketchup. What might it be? Okay, a lot of people know Heinz. There are lots of other brands in the States. Hunt's, Great Value, which is the Walmart brand, Hellmann's, etc., down to Sir Kensington's ketchup, which sounds very sophisticated indeed. I'll bet you don't know much about a lot of these brands, and that's because of our experience. You may see yourself as a loyalist to Heinz, but if Heinz isn't available at a restaurant, what ketchup do you eat at the restaurant? Whatever they're serving. So we make do with what we have to when we buy ketchup. So ketchup is a good metaphor for a lot of other brands. When you happen to be in the Frankfurt airport and you want to get a hot dog, you buy Heinz, because that's what they have. So I'm going to go through 5 myths of marketing that I think are still prevalent in the world of marketing. I'm going to show you some of the data to try and persuade you that these myths are not always true. And then I'm going to tell you some stories about why they aren't true and how to do some marketing that is effective. So we'll start with the first big myth. Your brand is special. This is the phoenix. It keeps rising from the flames. When I worked with Gillette, a big global brand, at Gillette World Headquarters in Boston, we would have guys come in and bring their razors for research and bring their shaving cream as well. And they'd call them on the phone and say, what brand do you use? And they'd say, I use Gillette, or I use Schick, or whatnot. And they'd come in with their products. We'd say, bring it in with you. Let's see what you've got. At the store, you've got an aisle like this. It's a huge selection in the States, lots of different brands to choose from. And when the men would come in, 40% didn't actually get the brand right. So they didn't even know which brand of shaving cream they were using. 40%. That's a lot of guys shaving. Some other data comes from toothpaste. If you are a Colgate person, how often do you use other toothpaste? Well, it turns out quite a lot. We are promiscuous. The Colgate buyers use other brands. The Aquafresh buyers use other brands, and same and same. And interestingly, you'll notice they use the other brands in proportion to their market share. So the biggest brand is Colgate. That's the brand most other people cheat with. So we are all promiscuous. We cheat around, we sleep around. Well, in this case, we brush around. So now we're going to get to our first quiz. Everybody has their phone. Here's the question. Stolichnaya is the vodka for what? A, sophisticated urban professionals. B, rustic traditionalists. C, university kids and party animals. D, honest working class men. E, I don't want to guess. So go ahead and type in your vote. And while you're doing that, I'll just say that having worked across lots of different brands, there's a lot of energy and money spent trying to define the characteristic of a brand. The brand persona, the brand voice, the brand purpose, the brand equity. And we'll see what people think of Stoli when the data come up. Everyone good? Got some votes in? Okay. I had apparently what was the world's best gin and tonic last night here in Helsinki. A local gin. Apue, that's the one. Yes, and it's served with berries and a little bit of herbs as well. It was very good. So here are the results. Stolichnaya is the vodka for, well, it looks like for a lot of different people. Most would say rustic traditionalists, but there were votes in all the other categories as well. So this shows that at least amongst this population, there's no clear definition of who Stoli is for. And this is common. This is a lot more normal than you'd think, that there's not that tight of a coordination between the brand and its audience and persona, despite how much effort is put into making that a very tight correlation. So we'll go back to the presentation now. And this is common in other categories. This, for instance, is data from tomato sauce. Heinz is the market leader at the top. Old El Paso is the bottom with a 27% household penetration. And this shows you, for different attributes like healthy and good value, how many people uniquely believe that that brand has that attribute. And it turns out very few. In fact, if you look at the average down here, the average unique attribution is 2%. And then most people, from 80 down to 40, 80%, link that attribute to multiple brands. So no one owns down to earth. No one owns reliable, as much as they might try to be the reliable tomato sauce, because I need reliable tomato sauce for my pasta. Also notice that it's a bit in proportion to its market share as well. So Heinz has captured more of the unique ratings than chicken, ton, or ragu. And that might just be because it's familiar, because it's the brand you know of. So sure, it sounds like it's traditional and trustworthy. So it's the mere availability of the brand that makes that linkage to the attribute, not necessarily something special with Heinz itself. This is the case also with cereal. Here's some more data showing 3 big brands of cereal in America and how people rate it on good for my family, trustworthy, good value, all of these different attributes that the brands fight over. 2 things to note. First of all, they're very similar. They're really similar, despite, again, all the effort to pull them apart. Second, the differences there are, again, correlated with your market share. So it's not something magical that the red brand has an advantage over the dark gray brand. It's just that it's more available to people, so they think of it more often, so they rate it higher on those scores, just like you would with ketchup. Okay, along with people not really seeing too many differences between these brands, it turns out loyalists are not that loyal. Here's another type of data. This comes from Malaysia. For soap and for noodles, this shows you, for all these different brands, how stable are the heaviest buyers. How often are heavy buyers from last year still heavy buyers of that brand this year? Turns out, very low. For soap, the average is 39%, which means over 60% of the heavy buyers last year are no longer heavy buyers of your brand this year. And for noodles, it's a little higher, it's 48%. But that's 50-50. That's a coin toss of whether your loyal buyers are still loyal next year. So you add all these things up about us being promiscuous shoppers, not seeing big differences between brands, not uniquely attributing characteristics to brands, and defection of the loyalists, and that means your brand is special is a myth and not necessarily a good law of marketing. That's number 1. Number 2, target precisely, the Griffin. Now, there is a caveat here. You don't want to sell razors to babies, and you don't want to sell diapers to teenage boys, I think. Actually, I heard that there's a very weird correlation between diapers and video games. It shows up on Amazon. People who regularly buy Call of Duty headsets also buy Depends diapers. So that might be too much information, but it's true. Okay, so here's some of the, oh, wait, get your phone out. It's time for another quiz. This will be the last quiz. Because of the 80-20 rule, brands should focus on their heaviest, most loyal consumers. A, completely agree. B, somewhat agree. C, somewhat disagree. D, completely disagree. E, what's the 80-20 rule? I do have a background in sociology, so these are very well-constructed question sets. Okay, while that data is being tabulated, I'll mention that this 80-20 rule is called the Pareto principle, after Wilhelm Pareto, an Italian from 100 years ago, who noticed that 80% of the land was owned by 20% of the landowners. Also, 80% of the peas in his garden came from 20% of the pea pods. For some reason, he thought, therefore, it's a natural law of everything. And people, ever since, have been looking around and seeing the Pareto distribution or the Pareto law. So let's see the results as they come up here. Everyone voting? Everyone voted? Good? Good. This is a very common thing you'll hear, is the 80-20 rule. And the results? Well, there we go. Most people somewhat agree and somewhat disagree. So I think everyone wishes there was the middle answer, which is neither agree nor disagree, because I really don't want to have a strong opinion. And then some people, yes, did say, what is the 80-20 rule? Well, now you have some background on the 80-20 rule. Let's see what the data say about the 80-20 rule. Let's go back to the presentation. Well, I need to take a side track. We'll come back to the answer in 1 second. First, I need to show you this chart. I love this chart. I'm a dork for charts, though. This chart is the canonical distribution of every brand's buyers. No matter what brand you put on here, this is the chart that shows you how many households or people buy you at a different rate per year, per quarter, per month, per day, whatever the number is. You see that most people buy you once or twice, and then fewer and fewer people buy you more and more and more frequently. There's a fancy name for this distribution. We just can call it the canonical distribution of brands. Big brands like Coke and Pepsi follow this. Here we have data from the UK. These also have the zero column, which is why Coke looks like it's smaller. Actually, the zero column is smaller, which means Coke has a bigger household penetration, and then all of those bars add up to be bigger than all the other bars here that are not zero, because Coke is a bigger brand in the UK. Every brand is like this, whether you're a love brand like Harley-Davidson, or a kids brand like Lego, or a huge global brand like Apple. Every brand follows this distribution, and it means a few things. It means you can't just grow this end of the curve. You can't just get people to buy more and more and more often without also growing the other bars, which are about getting people into the brand through household penetration. They move in lockstep. They all move together. What this also means is that the people at this end of the curve, the ones and the twos, they matter a lot. They add up to a lot of money, and in fact, they add up to more than 20%. They add up to roughly 50%. Here is 12 or 13 different categories. I'm good at math, but I can't count, apparently. From soft drinks down to shampoo, and this shows you what percent of the volume for any given brand comes from their 20% heaviest buyers. So of those loyalists, or those heavy buyers, how much volume do we get? And it's somewhere around 50%. There's some wiggle room that's probably significant when it comes to dollars, but when it comes to the natural laws, the law is about 50. It's a 50-20 rule, not an 80-20 rule. So half your volume does come from heavy users. We already know that they defect, they're not stable. Half your volume comes from those light users, those 1 and 2 time a year people. That's really important. It's really important. In fact, Procter & Gamble, I've worked with them for many years now, they've noticed that when they try and target too tightly, when they try and go after the heavy user for a specific product to make sure that they don't defect to another brand, they don't seem to grow that well. And this is a recent headline from Advertising Age, why P&G decided Facebook ad targeting often isn't worth the money. There's still something to be said for mass reach. Okay. So the old laws are not completely unapplicable in this new world. It's not to say, again, that you shouldn't target a little bit. Again, don't sell razors to babies. But if you over-target, you're missing out an opportunity to connect with all those light users who are very important. So for instance, if you happen to buy 1 cola a year, what brand of cola might you choose? Coke, Pepsi, the big one. If you don't buy razors very frequently and you have to buy 1 razor, Gillette might be the safe bet. You buy the big brand. So those light users, those 1 and 2 times a year people, are very important. One final bit of data comes from an analysis by Peter Field and Les Binet of 900 marketing cases in the IPA database. And they found that comparing campaigns that focus on loyalty to campaigns that focus on penetration, sales effects, market share effects, and profit effects are bigger for the campaigns that focused on penetration instead of loyalty. Almost twice the size and twice as many. So the evidence, the empirical evidence from 900 marketing cases and from a lot of other data is that you should not target precisely. You should try and grow your brand by increasing penetration and targeting broadly anyone who might ever need your product. Your ketchup, your razors, your diapers. Okay, that was myth number 2, the Griffin. Myth number 3, brands need a persuasive, unique selling proposition. The USP, this is a long-standing article of faith in advertising. Well, there's a great way to look at this. Noah Breyer put together a website called Brand Tags. It flashes up a name of a brand and a logo, and you type in what comes to mind. And he's collected millions of responses. Here are a couple examples. Coca-Cola, and this is in size order of the frequency of these words. Coke, soda, classic, drink, sugar, refreshing, sweet, red. Pepsi's in there, so people think of Pepsi when they think of Coke. And then it gets smaller and smaller. Evil, yum, cocaine, good, and then smaller and smaller because they're less and less frequent. But you notice Coca-Cola, a lot of those words up there are very generic to the category. It's about beverages or colas in general. Toyota, similar story. A lot of the words are generic. Car, quality, Japan, boring. Some of them are specific, like Camry or hybrid, and Prius, where they have really spent some effort trying to connect with those attributes. Crest, a very old brand. It's about 60 years old. This is what Crest stands for. I guess white has been a part of their campaign for a long time. But toothpaste and teeth and clean come up as much, if not more. How do they compare to their biggest competitor, Colgate? Toothpaste, teeth, and clean. So the 2 biggest brands in the States, in fact, they might be the 2 biggest brands in the world, basically stand for the category. They are representative of what all toothpaste is. So they're not that distinctive, and there's not a unique proposition that helps these brands get so big. Now, fashion has known this for a long time. What is the unique selling proposition of this Gucci ad? What's the logical, rational thing that they're trying to persuade you with? I have no idea. We work with Kellogg's, and a few years ago we persuaded them to create a marketing partnership with the United States Olympic Committee to be an Olympic sponsor. And it was their first time in decades that they did that. And it was built around a TV spot that we ran during the opening ceremonies when about 40 million people were watching. Here's the work.
Why does the finish get all the glory? Is the win all that matters? Is it in our human nature? Is it our survival instinct? Is that how we get ahead in life? Is the end the most rewarding part of the journey? Is it? The truth is, there's no destination without a beginning. No goodbye without hello. No dream without closing your eyes. No happily ever after without once upon a time. For us, there's no finish without the most important part of the day.
The start.
Kellogg's.
See you at breakfast.
Our agency didn't create the actual spot. Leo Burnett did that, and I give them full credit. It was a great partnership. It was an idea we brought forward. There's no unique selling proposition there. There's no particular persuasive thing that said Kellogg's is the right breakfast because of the carbohydrates and proteins that you can get. But that sold a lot of cereal. And it got us on par with long-time Olympic partners like Procter & Gamble and McDonald's in 1 year in London. And that's because it was moving. It was emotive. I have a daughter, and so when I see that, I still get a little choked up. These emotional ads, instead of the persuasive ones, have been shown to be very effective. Brain Juicer is an innovative marketing research company we sometimes work with, and they've done some retrospective look at some advertising that has been proven to be effective, like these 3 spots: the dancing Avian babies on roller skates, the Cadbury gorilla who plays the drums, and the Darth Vader boy who tries to start the car, move his cereal, get his dog off of his bed. And these, again, do not have very much in the way of unique selling propositions and persuasion, but these have been amazingly effective ads. And the results of this, and again, the 900 cases from IPA, show that the more emotions dominate over rational messaging, the bigger the business effects. The most effective ads of all are those with little or no rational content. That's a very scary thing for a logical, rational MBA like a lot of my clients. So I have to prove it with data. I have to show the logic and rationale of illogic and irrationality. But them's the breaks. So that's myth number 3. Brands need a persuasive, unique selling proposition. The fairy of myths. Number 4, people crave deep brand engagements. It's the unicorn. Well, here's an example of a deep brand engagement. This is an app for your phone. It's a game for Flush and Go. It's the first toilet paper where the roll can be flushed down the toilet, the core of the roll. And of course, I want to play a game about throwing things in a toilet to pass the time. No, I probably want to play something else. I don't actually know the download numbers on this, so I'm poking fun at it a little bit without the data. But I'm guessing, well, I can ask, does anyone have this app? Don't be afraid. Do you have Call of Duty as well? So very few people, no one here seems to have this app. That's because we don't really want to have that deep of a connection to our toilet paper. The same is true on social media, where we're supposed to be social and brands are supposed to have direct relationships with their consumers. Turns out consumers don't want a direct relationship with their brands. Here are a bunch of very popular brands. This is their page rank on Facebook, which are fairly high. And then here's the engagement numbers for how much people would even like a post by these brands. And those numbers are low. The average is 0.59%. It's not just on Facebook where these low numbers occur. That was the top line. So beyond just those popular brands, the number's even worse. It's 0.45. But click-through rates on banners, tiny. Purchasing because of a promotion you see in the store, tiny. Registration online via an email from a brand, tiny. Shedding tears when brands die, very, very small. That's a geek joke, too, if anyone got the Avogadro's number thing. So people are not connecting with brands that much. How do they use brands? Well, here's one way, to figure out what they're buying. I'll bet at a quick glance, you know most of these brands. On the top, there's a swoosh, the shield. You all know the red over here with the swipe. Or do you? Someone had a little fun with these logos, switched them up a little bit. But you know what? We didn't need that much information to recognize these brands. We didn't need to even see the words. And that's because a lot of what we use brands for is just to make sure we're buying the right product, the one we know, the one we're familiar with. So as long as the logo is clear and as long as there are distinctive assets, that might be sufficient. I've got a case study about this later. But first, I'm going to tell you a story from some work we did with PepsiCo and their smoothie brand, Naked Juice. They were launching a kale drink. Now, kale is not the first thing you probably think of when you think of a smoothie. Probably orange and apple and mango. So they had to get people over the hump and think that kale might actually taste good, because we know kale is a polarizing vegetable. So the campaign we came up with, the only kale would drink if kale drank kale. Kind of cute, kind of fun, kind of tongue-in-cheek, and the product is called Kale Blazer. Well, just as a little experiment, we put a little bit of money into creating a Twitter account for kale to show its love of kale blazer. And we just threw it up there. We didn't really support it with paid media. Little romantic scene between kale and kale blazer. Just a silly little piece of content. It got some retweets and some likes, not a lot, but somehow we ended up with 38,000 followers in a couple weeks who wanted to check out what Kale was saying about Kale Blazer. Now, they didn't really interact with us much. It was just a giggle, and they moved on in their day. But actually, the team now that I work with, one of our shorthands for whether something's a good idea is if you'd go, ha, that's funny. And that's about it. That's all it takes. That's all the interaction we were expecting. We did grow the brand a lot, but it wasn't all behind this Twitter account. It was behind things like, whoops, out of home. We're Kale, and we approve this Kale Blazer. 10 out of 10 Kales love the taste of Kale Blazer. So playing along with that joke, but traditional, mass reach, getting the word out there, not a lot of engagement. Now, if people do want to engage, they usually want it to be about themselves, not about you and your brand. Here's a case study from Kellogg's. We work with Pringles to show you one way to try and get engagement and to make sure it's focused on the people, not on you.
In the beginning, there was the can. Recognized the world over, the Pringles can is as iconic as a distinctively shaped potato chip stacked inside. But what if the fun didn't end when the last chip was gone and the can lived on as an incredibly fun and addictive game? Pringles Flavor Slam, created to bring the excitement of college basketball's biggest tournament into the homes of Walmart shoppers. Flavor Slam answers a huge challenge: how to be the standout snack during the tournament without any official sponsorship. And in the world of gajillion-dollar promotions, it's a crazy simple solve. Grab a can, a backboard, a ping pong ball, and you are in the game. To promote Flavor Slam, we partnered with renowned trick shot gurus Dude Perfect and created an epically mind-blowing ping pong trick shot video. In just 1 week, the video went insanely viral, scoring over 2 million views on YouTube. But this game was just getting started. Over 4.1 million views by the tournament's end. 141.6 million impressions. 31 years total watch time. And a sales lift of 22.2% as legions of aspiring trick shot artists headed to Walmarts everywhere to grab their own can backboards so they could shoot and share their own trick shot videos. A mobile site let fans check out other fans' videos posted on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Looking for a few more ballers, we put out the word where they live, play, and shop, and surprised several lucky video posters with a Pringles Prize Patrol delivery of a full pallet right to their doorstep. This year's tournament may have buzzer beaters and big arena showdowns, but the biggest shots will be made, and the most memorable games played in the living rooms, basements, and backyards of Pringles fans everywhere.
So that wasn't even really about Pringles. It was starting to be about Dude Perfect, this group of guys who do these trick shots with basketballs all the way across the stadium and things. And they go, yeah! And then it became about the people who bought the little stuff and played the game and uploaded their own videos. Not really about the chip itself. So that's the kind of engagement people wanted. So that was myth number 4. People crave deep brand engagements. Mostly they want to make sure they're buying the right brand, and once in a while they'll engage if it's really about them. Okay, last myth. Surveys are reliable predictors of human behavior. I like to say the consumer survey is the 30-second TV spot of marketing research. It's been around for decades. It's very stable, seems to be very reliable, but we might want to move on to a lot of other things as well, because we're not just limited to that technology anymore. Well, here's a story of how bad data can take you confidently in the wrong direction. Let's say you want to get people to buy more produce, to eat healthier. Well, there are lots of things you could do. You could have an app on your phone, so while you're shopping or putting your list together, it can help you. On the top, you can put these scores up around the store to tell people the healthy versus the unhealthy things. The bottom here, you can give people coupons and discounts. And then you can have information in the store at the shelf to actually help people get steered in the right direction. Well, when you ask people directly, what of these things will persuade them to buy more produce, they rank them in this order. Coupons, coupons, coupons. I want a discount, and then I'll buy more. And at the bottom, a divider for the produce in your cart. Scored very low. So we asked, that was a survey of 4,000 American consumers. Then we followed it up with a question about that bottom one, that cart divider. Would that really make you buy more or less? And most people said it wouldn't influence my purchase at all. Well, fortunately, my friend Colin Payne, a professor at New Mexico State University, did the experiment. He works with a grocery store down in Socorro, and they put dividers in the cart that said, put your produce here and put all your other products there. That's all it said. No education, no other information, no promotion, no discount. Just, this is the place for produce and this is the place for other stuff. He doubled produce sales. Doubled. Meanwhile, the average effect from other things that you saw, 1 or 2% lift. So here you have a difference between the survey results, which would say coupons are the way to go, and the actual behavior from that experiment, which had a radically stronger impact. Here's one of the challenges. It's really hard to predict this just by doing a survey or just by thinking about it back at the office with your colleagues, because a lot of these effects are unconscious and they're automatic because we are often very much on autopilot when we shop. So when you're walking around, I think what happened with that cart was it created a social norm. You somehow believed, well, it's normal to have that much produce. I better go to the produce section and fill this up. And it's normal to have that much of other stuff. The same is true, let's say, if you go to a movie theater and you get the medium popcorn. Well, in America, the medium popcorn is now this big. But it's called a medium, so that must be okay. It must be normal. So we follow these social norms. So that's one very brief example of why surveys are actually not reliable predictors of human behavior. So that was the fifth myth. To recap, and then I'll end with a couple stories. The myths are, your brand is special. Science shows us brands are interchangeable and heavy users regularly defect. Second myth, target precisely. Science says go for penetration, target broadly. And it's the 50-20 rule, not the 80-20 rule. I think the other reason the 80-20 rule has lasted is because it feels right. Stephen Colbert would say that's truthiness. I believe it's true in my gut, not in my brain. 80-20, 80 plus 20, that adds up to 100. That must be right. 50-20 just doesn't feel as right. Brands need a persuasive USP. The science shows us emotion often trumps persuasion, and be representative of the whole category, not unique and very distinct within the category. People crave brand engagement. It looks like people rarely engage with brands, and mostly they need brands as shortcuts and mnemonics to remember which brand of toothpaste their wife likes. Because you don't want to go home with the wrong brand of toothpaste. You got another trip to the store coming. Finally, surveys are reliable. Actually, experiment and theory are critical. So that theory of social norms, that comes from understanding psychology, sociology, human evolution. Fortunately, I do have a background in some of that stuff, so I find myself in a job, which is nice. But you need to do the experiments. You need to put it out there and do experiments. Casinos in America, there's a big chain called Harrah's Casino. Apparently, if you run a marketing program and you do not hold a control group to compare it with, you can get fired. They're that serious about running the experiments. And we know that Google and Facebook and Uber and large data type organizations are constantly running hundreds and hundreds of experiments every day on you and how you use Facebook to find out what's really true. Okay, I'm going to end with a couple quick stories, one not from my work and one from my work. Some of you might have seen this ad for Snickers.
Mike, what is your deal, man?
Come on, man. You've been riding me all day.
Mike, you're playing like Betty White out there.
That's not what your girlfriend said.
Baby. Use Snickers. Better?
Better. Hey! How about that? That hurt.
You're not you when you're hungry. Snickers satisfies.
It's a great ad. It's a great campaign. They've run it for several years now. And it's not just the TV spots, although the TV spots set up the basic idea. You're not you when you're hungry. You're someone else. You're a diva. You're an old woman. You're a cranky old man. Here's another way they did it. They took over Katie Price Jordan's Twitter feed. She's a page 6 model, I think is what it would be called, in England. And they had her start to tweet about economic policy. Great news about China's latest GDP figures. Woohoo! Or Chinese leaders now likely to loosen monetary policy to stimulate growth. Yay! Not what Katie Price usually tweets about. And after an hour or so of this, and getting more and more fan responses saying, what is going on, she finally posts this. This was so famous, I really wish I could take credit for the work, but this was so famous, people were quoting this on the floors of Parliament because it was such a funny and well-known case. They did little things like this. Now, they didn't really mess, again, with the important things of the brand. You might think, oh my God, they got rid of the name. You don't need the name, as I showed you earlier, to recognize which candy bar you're buying. But they did that as fun. And it was a hugely successful campaign. It ended up having double-digit growth in every country where they've run it. And again, it's a broadly targeted program. It's not just focusing on teenage boys, which I think used to be their sweet spot. There's no unique selling proposition. In fact, any food could help you get back to yourself when you're hungry. You don't need the peanuts in the bars to do that. It created a lot of emotion without a lot of USPs. So the last one I'll show is from Naked Juice again. This was a campaign to try and work with Wholesome Wave to bring fresh fruits and vegetables to places in need. Well, how do you get people who drink expensive smoothies to care about places called food deserts where you can't get healthy, nutritious food? Well, we thought we'd start with local influencers, these chefs and local celebrities, and have them take a selfie with a piece of fruit or vegetable, tag it, and then Naked Juice would donate some money to the cause. Well, that worked pretty well. And then this happened. I don't know if you all know The Ellen Show. It's pretty big. You probably all know Kim Kardashian. She's pretty big. And there they are doing a fruit selfie on the show and then posting it on Twitter as well. After that, things kind of went nuts. You have people doing it in class. That moment when you take selfies in health is on the agenda for class. Yep, hashtag drink good, do good. So classes started to do it. Lots and lots of people started to do it. In fact, it was so successful, we sparked an Instagram trend. We got 50,000 mentions. We earned 500 million media impressions. And we definitely sold a lot of juice. Not very USP, not very distinct, didn't ask for a lot of engagement. And when we did, it was about them, not about our brand. So, those are the myths. Those are a couple stories, some data to get you going. Thank you very much.
So, Ethan, thank you I have my background also in research, and I love numbers. And you know what? Finnish decision makers in companies, in states, they think that everything is more or less rational, and it's all about numbers. How we can convince them that influencing people is not just numbers and being rational?
I feel like the most progress I've had, and I was just talking with some colleagues in Helsinki yesterday about this at TBWA Integer, was that you have to actually use the data and numbers to persuade people that emotions matter. Okay. Because they otherwise get clenched up and get very nervous, thinking that humans are irrational. Because they like to believe themselves to be rational, so they want to also believe that consumers are the same.
Yeah. I've also, one tip which I've been using over the years is that when people try to claim that they are rational, so I ask that what kind of an Excel file or calculation did you make when you chose your spouse? So that's typically also something which made them quite quiet, saying that, okay, probably it was not that rational. And even, well, that's the biggest decision, or one of the biggest decisions in your life, that with whom you are, making family and, growing children. And
it's the same with buying houses.
Yeah.
A huge financial decision, and yet we don't have a spreadsheet and we don't make a calculation.
No.
Well, some of you probably do, but not many.
Yeah. Okay, there were also some tweets, and one question about, most of your examples were from business to consumer, this kind of daily products. How is it when we go to cars or something which is bigger? Is this also this kind of loyalty thinking, or with these kind of devices, is it also as not that loyal thinking as is it in
It turns out it's pretty much the same pattern. Even with cars. Cars are like expensive shirts. I mean, you buy a shirt and it says a little bit about you and it has a brand name on it, maybe a swoosh or something, or 3 stripes. You just buy cars much less frequently, but a lot of the same data from all over the world in lots of different categories, including luxury goods and durable goods, are finding the same patterns. So these are universal laws. Okay.
Then one of the most tricky target audiences is, of course, the audience where you are now, challenging this myths of advertising and marketing. So out of those 5 myths, which you just described, which is the one which, creates most kind of no votes from this type of audience? So what is still the something which people disagree? That no, the one which people are now going to, during the break, challenge you?
I think it's that your brand is special. I think that's the one most people have trouble with, because it's our business. I am getting paid to care about these brands and to know everything about them and everything about their competition and do competitive decks that are 120 pages long. So I forget who it was, Thomas Edison or someone, who said, if you are paid to think one way, it is not in your self-interest to think the opposite way. So we are paid to care about the brand. So that's why I use ketchup as a nice foil, because most of us don't work in ketchup. And that's a category we can then realize, oh, I'm that way too. When I'm not wearing my brand hat and being a marketer, I actually act like other humans.
Okay, we have also had now 2 conflicting tips concerning breakfast, because the previous presentation said no breakfast to be, creative in our job. And you had a great ad about the meaning of breakfast. So that comes to the topic of eating and refreshing. So now it's time for a break. We will have now half an hour break. Let's be back here 11:30 sharp. And then we continue. And once more, applause to Ethan. Thank you. Thank you.